The first time I realized the treaty was a weapon, it was already inside my lungs. Not metaphor, not poetry, literal. The council chamber on Vera was designed for the old species, the ones with slow blood and delicate membranes. The air was cool and faintly sweet, filtered through living coral lattices that hummed like distant bees. For most delegates it was a comfort. For my kind, the Cellon, it was a mild irritant. Our breathing sacs preferred dry metal air, clean and sharp. Here every inhale carried moisture that clung to the inner lining of my throat, making me want to clear it, making my frills flare with impatience. And yet I did not, because I was an observer, a junior attaché, a note-taker pressed into the shadow of a pillar carved from petrified kelpstone, watching the great ones decide the fate of a world that had only just learned to pronounce galaxy. Earth, humans, deathworlders, the word rolled through the chamber like a warning scent. The treaty sat on the center dais, projected in pale light, every clause bright enough to sting the eyes. And as the High Counselor Sorin read the signature line aloud, the coral lattice hum shifted, just slightly, as if the building itself held its breath. The government of Earth, Sorin intoned, voice thick with ceremonial resonance, hereby binds itself to the Veran Concord under the name. She paused. The pause was small, almost nothing, but in a room where silence carried the weight of fleets, it was a rupture. Terra Sol. A ripple moved through the delegates, a flicker of mandibles, a tightening of skin folds, the faint clicking of translator beads recalibrating. I felt my frills lift. Terra Sol, not Earth, not Human Federation, not United Planetary Council. Terra Sol, a name from old star maps, from pre-Concord catalogs, a dead label, and the question formed in my mind with a sharpness that made my breathing sacs constrict. Why would a new species sign under an old name? Why would they hide inside language? And why did the treaty's ink, digital, yes, but ink in essence, smell like rot to my species? I should have spoken. I should have flagged the anomaly. Instead, I watched as the galaxy applauded its own cleverness. Deep Drift Station, Outer Trade Spine. I had been raised to believe in systems. The Cellon lived in systems. Our cities were stacked in spirals of alloy and basalt, each layer regulated for pressure, temperature, and light. We were born into shared air and shared obligation. Individuality existed, but it was shaped like a tool, useful, measured, never indulgent. And so when the Veran Concord appointed me to the diplomatic corps, my parents made the traditional offering, a strip of polished slate etched with my lineage code, placed in my palm as I left. Remember the structure, my mother had said, her voice rasping through the membrane of her throat. The galaxy is structure. Chaos is for the unbound. Humans, I'd heard, were unbound. Deep Drift Station smelled like hot lubricant and ionized dust. Its corridors rang with the constant vibration of cargo magrails, a low thrumming that traveled up my bones. Lights flickered in a rhythm that wasn't a malfunction, just a cost-saving pattern, like a heartbeat trying to conserve energy. I stood beside Ambassador Naelin, my superior, as a human ship docked. It was not sleek. It did not glide like Veran cutters or fold space with the elegant geometry of the Atharan. It arrived like a block of stubborn metal shoved through the void. A freighter hull reinforced beyond necessity, scarred by micrometeor impacts, and patched in mismatched plates. Its engines whined, not sang. Ugly, Naelin murmured, frills twitching with disdain. Functional, I said before I could stop myself. He glanced at me. You sound impressed. I was not exactly, but my eyes kept returning to the ship's docking clamps, mechanical, redundant, overbuilt, like a creature with too many bones. A human stepped out first. He was smaller than I expected, but denser. Gravity on Earth was higher than standard. Everyone knew that. Still, seeing him move, balanced, economical, like his joints were designed for resistance, made my skin prickle. He wore a plain suit, no ceremonial bands, no visible translator collar, only a small device behind his ear. His hair was dark. His face had lines like he smiled often or squinted against bright light. His eyes swept the dock with calm assessment. He saw us, he nodded, and he offered his hand. I'm Ellis Rowe, he said. The translator bead at my throat rendered it smooth. Too smooth. Human speech had hard edges in raw form I'd heard, like stones clicking together. This version was softened. Nailin did not take the hand. Varen etiquette discouraged direct physical contact in first meetings. Humans, I'd been told, insisted on it. Instead, Nailin dipped his head. Ambassador Nailin of the Sellan delegation, and this is a Tashay Keth. Ellis's gaze moved to me. I felt it like a weight. Good to meet you, Keth, he said. Good. The word was casual, unarmored. As if diplomacy was a hallway conversation. Your vessel is robust, I said. His mouth quirked. She's kept us alive. Kept us alive. It should have been a throwaway comment. Instead, it struck me as a statement of doctrine. Not she's efficient. Not she's compliant. Kept us alive. Humans spoke like survival was the baseline and everything else was a luxury. Nailin gestured toward the conference bay. We will proceed to terms. Ellis followed without hesitation. And as he walked, I noticed something else. The human carried no visible weapons, no guard detail, no drones. Either they were foolish, or they were confident enough not to show teeth. Both possibilities were dangerous. Council Chamber, Orbit of Vera. I returned to Vera weeks later for the formalization ceremony. My role was still minor, but deep drift had left residue in my mind. The human's calm, his ship's scars, his choice of words. The treaty, we were told, was a triumph. Humans had been discovered on the edge of the trade spying, their radio noise like a swarm of insects in old sensor arrays. When first contact was made, they had responded with cautious curiosity. They had no faster-than-light travel of their own yet. Their ships were sublight, their colonies few. The Concord had offered them inclusion, protection, technology transfer, a seat someday at the Council's outer rings. In exchange, humans would sign the Varen Concord Treaty and accept oversight. Oversight meant limitation. Limitation meant safety. Deathworlders needed safety rails. That was the assumption. Two alien cultural assumptions framed everything. First, that no species would ever sign a binding treaty under a name that wasn't its true polity. Identity was sacred in Concord law. Names were anchors. To lie in a signature was to invite systemic collapse. Second, that rescue was conditional. In the Concord, aid was traded. Life was a resource. You saved those who could repay or who served strategic necessity. To do otherwise was waste. Humans, I would learn, broke both. The ceremony proceeded. The coral lattice hummed. The delegates postured. The treaty's clauses glowed. And then the signature line appeared again. Terra Sol, a dead label. I watched Ellis Rowe approach the dais. He moved like he belonged in heavier gravity, which he did, but also like he did not feel the eyes on him. He carried no ceremonial mantle, only a thin data slate. High Counselor Sorin extended a stylus, symbolic, because signatures were biometrically verified anyway. Ellis took it, paused, and looked up at the chamber. Before we sign, he said, voice carrying through the acoustics, I want to confirm a point. There was an immediate tension. Protocol frowned on last-minute clarifications. Sorin's expression remained smooth. State your concern. Ellis nodded once. Clause 17, subsection 4. The Concord retains the right to enforce compliance through corrective intervention should Terra Sol violate the restrictions on weaponized space-time manipulation. A murmur, Atharan delegates shifted, their translucent neck sacs pulsing. Corrective intervention was a polite term for orbital sanctions, sometimes worse. Yes, Sorin said, it is standard for developing worlds. Ellis's eyes narrowed slightly. And the definition of Terra Sol in the treaty, does it refer to the planet known as Earth, third orbit of the local star? Sorin blinked once. Terra Sol is the designated polity name you provided. Ellis's mouth twitched again. Amusement. No, something like a controlled release of pressure. Good, he said softly. Then we're agreed. He signed, the treaty locked. The chamber erupted in applause, and in my lungs the sweet air suddenly felt heavier like it had gained mass. Because I saw in the brief flash of the biometric seal a secondary layer of code, not in the treaty text hidden beneath. An embedded legal reference, ancient Concord law, a loophole. My frills went rigid. Humans had not just signed, they had signed something else. And the Concord, arrogant and satisfied, did not notice. Maintenance Bay, Deep Drift Station. Weeks later, the first complication arrived in the form of a screaming alarm. Deep Drift Station's hull was not meant to ring like that. Its alarms were layered, designed to be heard by species with different hearing ranges. What I heard was the low-frequency vibration that traveled through metal, felt more than heard, like the station itself panicking. Naelin's frills flared. Report. A station tech, small, furred, a gerund scrambled up the ladder, claws clacking on rungs. Pirate flotilla, ambassador, outer approach, transponders masked. Pirates were common in the outer trade spine, usually ragtag, usually avoidant of Concord patrols. Deep Drift was a neutral hub, attacking it was risky, unless they were desperate, or unless someone paid them. Naelin turned to me, inform security, seal the docking arms. I complied, fingers tapping commands into my slate. The air in the bay smelled of overheated wiring and fierce sweat from the gerund. Then another alarm tone layered in, higher, sharper. Unknown FTL signature, the tech yelped. Not pirate, coming in fast. Naelin froze. Deep Drift had no defense grid. Concord patrols were hours away. If a hostile FTL-capable ship emerged within weapons range, the station would be a carcass before help arrived. Identify, Naelin snapped. The tech's eyes flicked over his console. Human ship. Designation, no, it's not in registry, it's broadcasting. Ellis Rowe's voice crackled through the station's comms a second later. Deep Drift Station, this is the human vessel Cinder. We see the flotilla. Do not engage. Lock down and keep your people inside. Naelin's frills stiffened with offense. This is a Concord facility. You will not issue directives. Ellis's voice didn't change. Ambassador, with respect, you don't have time for pride. Those pirates have a gravlance. They're going to cut your spine in half. Gravlance, that was military hardware. Forbidden in outer trade zones, the tech whimpered. They do, reading mass distortion. Naelin's throat sac pulsed. Human vessel Cinder, you are not authorized. We are already here, Ellis said, and we're going to stop them. The view screens in the bay shifted to external cameras. Space outside was a black ocean, speckled with distant stars. The pirate flotilla was a cluster of mismatched ships, crude, bristling with weapon mounts. Among them, one vessel carried a long spine, gravlance emitter, glowing faintly, and then the human ship appeared. It did not emerge with the elegant shimmer of Concord fold drives. It arrived like a wound opening in the dark, a harsh tearing of space that made my vision blur. The human vessel was larger than Ellis's freighter. This was not a civilian ship. It was angular, layered in armor plates, with external scaffolds like ribs. Its engines burned a dim, angry blue. How, the tech stammered. Humans don't have. They do now, I whispered, my frills trembling. The Cinder rotated, aligning itself between the pirates and the station. No warning shots, no negotiation, and yet it did not fire. Instead, it released something. At first it looked like debris, a cloud of glittering fragments. Then the fragments unfolded, each becoming a thin reflective sheet. Hundreds, thousands. They drifted outward in a precise pattern like a net being cast. The pirates fired. Red beams lanced through the field. And the beams bent. Light curved around the sheets, refracted, scattered, returning as harmless diffuse glow. The pirate ships panicked, thrusters flaring, trying to maneuver. The net adjusted, sheets shifting, always in the path. Ellis's voice came again, calm as if discussing weather. Deep Drift, we've deployed prismatic chaff. Their targeting is blind. Prismatic chaff, a human engineering solution, not stronger weapons, better physics. The pirates switched to mass drivers, firing chunks of metal. The chaff could not bend those. Fragments slammed into sheets, shattering them. And then the human ship did fire, a single pulse invisible at first. Then the pirate Gravland's ship's spine went dark. Its emitter collapsed inward like a crushed organ. Emp strike, the tech breathed, the pirates scattered. The cinder did not pursue, Ellis's voice again. Deep drift, pirates are retreating, send medical to docking arm 3. One of their ships clipped your exterior habitat ring. You'll have depressurization casualties. Nailin stared at the screen, frills slack. Human, he said slowly into the comm, why would you risk your vessel for a station not under your protection contract? Ellis paused, just long enough that I imagined him choosing words. Because people are inside, he said simply, and we don't leave people inside burning metal. That second assumption, rescue is conditional, fractured in my mind. For humans, it wasn't. And then he added, quieter, also, Ambassador, tell the Council the treaty's already being tested. Someone wants you scared. The channel cut. Naelin's gaze turned to me sharp. Keth, you saw the signature line on Vera. My frills tightened. Yes. Terra Sol, he whispered, like the name was suddenly venom. I tasted the sweet air and realized it now smelled like the beginning of smoke. Council Chamber, Orbit of Vera. The hearing was called within days, not because the Concord cared about deep drift, but because it cared about precedent. Human FTL emergence, human intervention, pirate military hardware, each was a crack in the smooth glass of Concord control. I stood behind Nailin again, my slate heavy in my hands. The chamber lights were dimmer than last time, tinted toward blue to soothe the species with photoreceptive stress. For me, it made the world look colder. Ellis Rowe stood in the center ring, alone, facing the semicircle of council members. High Councillor Sorin sat at the center, her skin gleaming like polished stone, her eyes dark and lidless. To her right sat Council Member Varro, a Dren noble with segmented arms and a throat crest that inflated when he spoke. Varro was known for his fear of deathworlders, for his insistence that chaos must be quarantined. To Sorin's left sat Councillor Helia of the Atharan, translucent and fluid, her body held in a faintly shimmering containment field. Her species valued probability and prediction. Humans offended her simply by being unpredictable. Sorin's voice rang, Human Representative Ellis Rowe, you have deployed unauthorized countermeasures in Concord space. Ellis's posture was relaxed, but not careless, hands clasped behind his back, chin slightly lifted, eyes steady. We stopped an attack, he said, Varro's crest inflated. You interfered in Concord jurisdiction, that station was under council oversight. And it was about to be cut in half, Ellis replied. Helia's voice came through her field like water poured over glass. You claim you acted under rescue imperative, yet rescue imperative is not codified in Concord law. Alice's gaze moved to her. Maybe it should be. A ripple of disapproval. Sorin leaned forward. We are not here to debate Concord philosophy. We are here to address your violation. You utilized FTL insertion without registry. You deployed unknown technology. You disabled a vessel without authorization. Ellis nodded, yes. The chamber stilled. Most species denied, deflected, argued precedent. Humans, apparently, could say yes like it was a tool. Varro's segmented hand tapped the arm of his chair. Then you admit guilt. Ellis's mouth twitched again. I admit action. Nailin hissed softly at my side. Insolent. Ellis continued, voice even. The pirates had a gravlance, that is forbidden tech. They were going to kill thousands. We prevented it with minimal force. No ships destroyed. No lives taken intentionally. Helia's field shimmered. Your EMP strike could have killed biologicals aboard the pirate vessel. Ellis's eyes sharpened. And yet it didn't, because we tuned it, because we scanned first, because we didn't want to kill them. Varro's crest expanded fully now, a sign of agitation. Deathworlders preaching restraint. Absurd. Ellis looked at him for a long moment, and for the first time his calm felt like something else, a lid on something hot. "Council member," he said softly, "restraint is not the absence of capacity, it's the choice." A chill moved through my frills. Soren raised a hand. "Regardless, your treaty binds you. Clause 17 restricts weaponized spacetime manipulation. Your FTL insertion is dangerously close to that category." Ellis inclined his head. "About Clause 17, can I request clarification on definitions?" Soren's eyes narrowed. "State it." Ellis's hand moved, pulling a data slate from his pocket. He tapped it once. The treaty text projected above the dais, glowing. "Terra Sol," he said. "The treaty binds Terra Sol." Soren's voice was sharp now. "Yes." Ellis's eyes flicked toward the audience ring, and for a heartbeat I felt he was looking at me, though that was impossible. "Then I'd like to submit an addendum," he said, "for the record." Varro's crest deflated slightly in confusion. "An addendum, now?" Ellis nodded. "It's already filed, under Concord Legal Archive, time-stamped at signature lock." Helia's field pulsed. "You cannot file an addendum without council consent." Ellis smiled, a thin, controlled expression. "We did." A murmur surged. Soren's voice hardened. "Explain." Ellis tapped his slate again. A new document projected, dense legal language, written in old Concord format. Most delegates struggled with it. Translator beads lagged, struggling to render archaic terms. I felt my frills tighten as my own translator caught up. It was a name definition. Terra Sol, the document stated, referred not to the planet Earth. It referred to a corporate entity. A human-created legal shell, registered on Earth 2 days before first contact. Terra Sol Industries, holding company. The treaty did not bind the human governments at all. It bound a shell. The chamber erupted in noise. Soren stood, her ceremonial calm cracking. "This is fraud." Ellis's smile vanished. "It's law." Varro's segmented arms flexed, claws scraping his chair. "You deceived us." Ellis's voice rose, not loud, but it filled the chamber with iron. "You offered us a treaty designed to put a leash on a species you called dangerous. You tried to bind our future before you understood us. So we read your laws, we found the seams, we signed what you put in front of us." Helia's field flickered rapidly, a sign of distress. This violates the cultural anchor principle." Ellis tilted his head. "On Earth, we have many names. Governments change. Borders change. Corporations exist longer than empires. You assumed names are sacred. We assumed contracts are puzzles." Naelin's frills were rigid beside me. He whispered, almost reverent despite himself, "They weaponized paperwork." Soren's voice trembled with fury. "The Concord will nullify." Ellis shook his head. "You can't. The treaty includes your own nullification clause. To void it unilaterally, you must prove malicious intent. Our intent was survival." Varro's crest flared again. "Then you admit you were threatened." Ellis's eyes locked on him. "Yes, by you." Silence. In that silence my internal arc shifted. Fear, yes, because humans had just outmaneuvered the council in its own sacred law. Confusion because they had done it without arrogance, without gloating, as if it was simply necessary. And the first spark of insight because they had not done it to dominate. They had done it to avoid being controlled. Humans were not seeking conquest. They were seeking breathing room, but the council would not grant it. And when systems are challenged, systems retaliate. Outer Rim Tribunal Annex, Vera orbits. The second escalation came not as debate, but as sanction. The Concord, humiliated, could not admit the humans had won legally, so it did what it always did. It shifted the battlefield. A tribunal was convened in the annex hall, a smaller chamber, harsher lighting, designed for judgment rather than ceremony. The air here was dry, metallic, and tasted of old static. It made my breathing sacs ease, but the tension made my frills itch. Ellis was summoned again. So was Naelin, representing the Sellan delegation's trade interests with Earth. And I, by extension, was there. Council member Varro chaired the tribunal. His segmented arms rested on the bench like folded knives. Human representative, he said, your deception invalidates trust. Therefore, the Concord will impose restrictions outside treaty bounds. All technology transfer to Earth is suspended. All trade is embargoed. All human vessels entering Concord space will be boarded. Ellis stood with hands at his sides. You're punishing civilians. Varro's crest inflated. We are containing risk. Helia, present as advisory, floated at Varro's side, her field dim. The probability of human retaliation rises. Varro clicked his mandibles. Humans cannot retaliate, they have no fleets. Ellis's gaze moved to Helia. You think we don't? Helia's field pulsed uncertainly. Your manufacturing index suggests limited capacity. Ellis nodded slowly. Limited, yes. Non-existent, no. Varro's voice sharpened. Enough, the embargo stands. Naelin spoke, frills flared. Council member, embargo will destabilize outer spine trade. Humans are already integrated into freight routes. Their ships. Varro cut him off. Acceptable loss. That phrase landed like a stone. Acceptable loss. The Concord treated worlds like numbers. Humans, I suspected, did not. Ellis's voice went quiet. If you board our ships, you will find things you don't understand, and you will break them, and people will die. Varro's segmented finger tapped the bench. Deathworlder melodrama. Ellis stepped closer, just one pace. His calm was still there, but now I could see the strain beneath it, like metal under stress. Council member, he said, I'm an engineer, I don't do melodrama, I do failure modes. My frills lifted. Ellis continued. You want control, fine, but don't confuse control with safety. Your boarding parties will trigger our safeties, and our safeties are not designed for your hands. Varro's crest flared, threat. Ellis's eyes hardened, warning. The tribunal adjourned with the embargo in place, and as we left, Naelin hissed at me. Keth, you are to compile every human technical specification we have, if they have built FTL, if they have built weapons. They have built something, I said. Naelin's frills twitched. You sound certain. I remembered the net of prismatic chaff, the tuned emp, the calm voice saying, keep your people inside. They build for survival, I said, and survival breeds creativity. Naelin's eyes narrowed. Creativity is another word for instability. I did not answer, because somewhere inside me, the old belief in structure was cracking. Perhaps chaos was not the enemy, perhaps chaos was a tool. Border Patrol Corridor, Concord Perimeter. The third escalation was tactical. 2 weeks into the embargo, a Concord patrol boarded a human cargo ship at the perimeter corridor. The ship, registered under Terrasol Industries, carried medical supplies destined for a Jaren colony suffering from fungal lung rot. Fungal lung rot was slow, painful, but treatable if the antifungal compounds arrived in time. The Concord's boarding team, Dren Marines under Varro's authority, found what they claimed was unregistered reactor tech. They seized the ship, they detained the crew, and the medical supplies sat in cargo holds while the colony coughed itself into silence. This was not just politics, this was consequence. Humans responded not with warships, but with a message broadcast across the trade spine. Ellis's face appeared on screens in ports and stations. His eyes looked tired now, shadows under them. To the Concord, he said, voice steady, release the cargo, it's medicine. The Jaren colony didn't sign your treaty games, they're dying. Varro responded through official channels. The cargo will be inspected, procedure must be followed. Procedure, I could almost hear my mother's voice, remember the structure, but structure was killing people. The Jaren colony sent its own plea. Their speakers were wet with coughing, their fur clumped with mucus. The smell of their sickness traveled even through feeds, imagined but potent. "Please," they rasped. "We cannot pay, we cannot." The Concorde did not respond. And then, the human reveal began to form, not in a single moment, but in a pattern. Human ships started appearing along the trade spine, not armed, not aggressive, but present. They parked near embargo checkpoints, their hulls scarred, their engines idling like restrained beasts. They broadcast open channels. "We are here," they said. "We are watching." The Concorde called it intimidation. Humans called it accountability. Nailin and I were stationed at a perimeter outpost when Ellis arrived in person. The outpost was a rotating cylinder, artificial gravity generated by spin. The corridor lights were harsh white, making every surface look clinical. The smell was antiseptic and recycled air, with a faint tang of ozone from overworked shields. Ellis walked beside two humans this time, security, perhaps, but they wore no armor, only utilitarian clothing with tool belts. Nailin met him in the briefing room. "You are escalating," Nailin accused. Ellis rubbed his forehead, a human gesture of fatigue. "No, I'm refusing to let you hide behind distance." Nailin's frills flared. "The Concorde has rules." Ellis looked at him. "And do the rules keep people alive, Ambassador, or do they keep the Council comfortable?" Nailin hissed. "You think emotion is governance?" Ellis's eyes softened for a heartbeat. "I think life is not negotiable." That was another human rule, irrational to Concorde minds. Life is not negotiable. In the Concorde, everything was negotiable, even air. Ellis turned to me then. "Keth, right?" I stiffened. "Yes." "You were in the chamber," he said. "You saw the name issue." I felt my frills tremble. "I did." Ellis nodded. "Then you understand something. The Concorde will not admit it lost, so it will keep pushing until someone bleeds." Nailin snapped. "Are you threatening bloodshed?" Ellis's voice went cold. "I'm predicting it, and I'm trying to prevent it." He placed a small device on the table. It looked like a dull metal disc, palm-sized, with a faint blue line around its edge. "What is that?" Nailin asked warily. Ellis leaned back. "An answer, but not one I want to use." Nailin's frills lifted in suspicion. "A weapon." Ellis shook his head. "A tool, like all weapons are when you're honest." He tapped the disc. It hummed softly, a vibration that made the metal table resonate. "We call it a fold anchor," Ellis said. "It stabilizes local space-time. You deploy it near a fold-capable ship, and it can't fold. It has to go sublight. It's non-lethal." Nailin stared. "That is impossible. Fold fields are." "Math," Ellis finished, "and math can be argued with." My frills rose higher. A human engineering impossible solution, not bigger guns, a way to deny the Concorde its greatest advantage, mobility. Ellis continued. "We built it because your fleets scare us, because we knew you might try to corrective intervene. We built it as a restraint, not an attack." Nailin's eyes narrowed. "And you bring it here to threaten." Ellis's voice was tired again. "I bring it here to show you we're not helpless, and to ask you again, release the medicine." Nailin said nothing, because he could not. He was trapped between Concorde loyalty and the visible suffering of the Jaren colony. I watched him, and I realized something else about humans. They forced moral clarity by refusing to accept gray. They were stubborn enough to make everyone else choose. Detainee dock, perimeter outposts. The boarding team's seized human ship was brought into the outpost's dock. Through the observation window I saw it, a medium freighter, its hull marked with human script. Inside, humans in restraint bands sat on the deck, back straight. The Dren Marines stood over them, armored, crests flared. The Jaren medicine crates sat nearby, untouched. Varro arrived via hololink, his face projected above the dock, larger than life, crest expanded like a threat display. "Human prisoners," he said. You will submit your reactor designs for inspection. One of the detained humans spoke. A woman, hair cropped short, eyes steady. That reactor keeps our life support stable, she said. You take it apart, my crew suffocates. Varro clicked, acceptable risk. The woman's jaw tightened. You really like that phrase. Varro's crest rippled. You will comply. Ellis's voice came through the outpost comm. He stood beside Nailin and me in the control room, watching. Varro, Ellis said, stop. You're going to kill them. Varro's projection turned toward Ellis. Engineer, you have no authority here. Ellis's eyes were flat. Release them, release the cargo, or I deploy the fold anchor on your patrol ships in this corridor. You won't fold out, you'll be stuck. Varro's segmented arms lifted slightly, as if ready to strike even through projection. Threat confirmed. The Concord will respond with force. Ellis inhaled. I heard it, even through the comm, a controlled breath. This is your last chance, he said. Varro's crest flared. Do it, Deathworlder, show your true nature. For a heartbeat, I believed Ellis might. And then the human did something that rewrote my understanding of them. Ellis turned away from Varro and spoke to the outpost commander, a neutral species named Lyra, with 6 eyes and skin that shifted color with emotion. Commander, Ellis said, can you open the dock's emergency venting system remotely? Lyra's eyes widened. That would depressurize the dock, the prisoners. Won't die, Ellis said, not if I'm right. Nailin hissed, what are you doing? Ellis looked at him, engineer, failure modes. He keyed his comm to the dock. Human crew, he said, voice calm, brace, hold your breath on my mark, do not panic. The detained humans looked up, eyes locking on the camera. Not fear, trust. How could they trust him? He counted softly, 3, 2, 1, mark. Lyra, trembling, triggered the vent. The dock's air blasted out into space. Frost bloomed across the observation window. Alarms screamed. The Dren Marines staggered, their armor seals struggling to compensate. Their crests flattened in panic. The humans, unarmored, did not thrash. They curled into compact shapes, hands clasped, eyes closed. Their bodies went still, holding breath. Impossible. No species could hold breath in vacuum long enough to matter. Except humans, apparently. They had trained for it. They had planned for it. The Dren Marines, designed for lower gravity and higher oxygen, flailed. 2 collapsed, their suit seals failing in the rapid pressure drop. Their bodies convulsed. PG-13 violence, but still brutal in implication. Suffocation, not gore. Ellis spoke again, voice sharp now. Release the restraints, he barked to the dock's automated system, having overridden it through Lyra's panel. Open the inner hatch. The hatch cycled. The humans, still breath held, rolled through into the interior corridor where pressure remained stable. Med teams rushed them. The Dren Marines, disoriented, were dragged after, coughing, crest membranes pale. Ellis turned back to Varro's projection, face hard. I didn't kill your soldiers, he said. I saved mine, and yours, because I could have left them to die in that dock. Varro's crest trembled. You used vacuum as a weapon. Ellis's eyes burned. No, I used it as a lesson. You think we're fragile because we look soft. But we grew up on a world that tries to kill us with air, water, heat, cold, microbes, and our own mistakes. We adapted. There it was, the galaxy's moment forming. Humans were deathworlders not just in body but in mindset. They planned for catastrophe as routine. They trained for the worst as a baseline. And they could weaponize environment with terrifying competence, then choose restraint. Varro's projection flickered as if he wanted to strike through the void. This is rebellion, he hissed. Ellis leaned closer to the camera. Call it what you want. Now release the medicine. Nailin spoke then, voice strained. Varro, the Jeren colony. Varro snapped, silence Selen. And yet, perhaps because the dock event had been witnessed by multiple delegations, perhaps because public sentiment mattered more than Varro admitted, the outpost commander Lyra quietly authorized the cargo release. crates moved. A human medic team, waiting nearby, took them without celebration. Ellis exhaled, shoulders sagging for the first time. He looked at Naelin. "You see it now." Naelin's frills trembled. "I see that the Concord is losing control." Ellis nodded. "Good, now help me stop it from turning into war." I stood frozen, my inner arc shifting again. Fear now deeper, because humans had capacities we hadn't accounted for. Confusion, because they used those capacities to save, not to slaughter. Insight, because their irrational rescue ethic was a strategic force multiplier. It made allies, and somewhere beneath it all the first stirrings of respect, and maybe terror, because if humans could hold breath in vacuum for minutes, what else could they endure? What else had they prepared for? Jaren Colony, Fungal Haze Basin. The medicine arrived, barely. Naelin and I traveled with a small Concord convoy as observers, partly to ensure the release was documented, partly because the council wanted to show benevolence after being pressured. The Jaren colony was on a moon wrapped in perpetual mist. Fungal spores hung in the air like gray snow, coating everything in a damp sheen. The smell was earthy, sweet, and sickening, like decay mixed with wet fur. Inside the colony habitat domes, the air was filtered, but still carried the faint taste of fungus. Jaren children lay on cots, their small chests rising and falling with effort. Their eyes were glassy. Human medics moved among them with quiet urgency. They wore simple respirators, not full hazard suits. Their skin would be vulnerable to spores, yet they worked. One human, a man with graying hair and a weary face, knelt beside a Jaren child and spoke softly, voice low enough, but the translator bead barely caught it. "Hey. We are here, you're not alone." The Jaren's paw twitched, weakly clasping the human's finger. I felt something twist in my chest. This was not efficient, this was not transactional, this was commitment. Naelin watched too, frills lowered. "They risk infection for strangers," he murmured. "Yes," I said. He looked at me sharply. "And you approve?" I hesitated, then spoke the truth. "I don't understand it, but I think it changes the calculus." Naelin's frills trembled. "Calculus, yes, allies gained through compassion." He said compassion like it was an exotic mineral. Ellis arrived in the dome later, having stayed behind to manage the perimeter standoff. When he entered, the dome's lighting cast his shadow long across the floor. He looked exhausted, shoulders heavy. The human medic with graying hair, his name tag read Dr. Sana, approached Ellis. "We're stabilizing them," Sana said, "but we need more. Their filtration is failing. If we patch it." Ellis nodded. "We'll patch it." Naelin stepped forward. "You cannot simply modify their habitat systems. It violates Concord infrastructure standards." Ellis looked at him, and there was no anger now, only a tired patience. "Ambassador," he said, "your standards were written by people who don't live in fungus." Naelin's frills flared. "Standards are how we prevent collapse." Ellis gestured around at the coughing children. "Collapse is already here. Standards can come after breathing." Sana touched Ellis's arm lightly, human physical contact, familiar, grounding. "Ellis," Sana said softly, "you can't keep doing this alone." Ellis's jaw tightened. "I'm not alone." His eyes flicked toward me, and in that moment, I realized he had chosen me, not as a pawn but as a witness. Humans understood something the Concord often forgot. Narratives mattered. Witnesses mattered. Allies were built in moments like this, not in treaties. I stepped closer. "What do you need?" Naelin hissed, "Keth." Ellis answered, "We need someone inside the council who will tell the truth when Varro pushes for corrective intervention. We need someone who can translate our intent into terms the Concord understands." My frills trembled. "I am a junior attaché." Ellis shrugged. "Then you're less invested in their pride." Naelin's frills stiffened, but he did not deny it. The stakes shifted again. This was no longer about a treaty loophole. This was about whether humans would be crushed by a system that could not tolerate being outsmarted, and whether I, small, structured Cellin, would choose structure over life. Council Chamber, Orbit of Vera. Varro moved quickly. Within days, he presented a motion for corrective intervention against Terra Sol Treaty violators. The logic was twisted but clever. Since humans had admitted their treaty bound only a shell entity, the Concord argued that their actions in Concord space were outside treaty protection and therefore subject to direct enforcement. The council chamber was packed, air humid, coral hum intense, tension like static against skin. Ellis was not present. He was on the perimeter, managing ships, patching domes, keeping medicine moving. Humans could not be everywhere. Varro stood, crest inflated, voice booming. Deathworlders have demonstrated deception, unauthorized technology, and hostile environmental manipulation. They have endangered Concord personnel. Corrective intervention is required before their instability spreads. Murmurs of agreement from some delegates. Fear was contagious. Helia spoke, her voice wavering. Probability matrices indicate conflict escalation if intervention proceeds. Humans show restraint, but under pressure. Varro snapped, they will break, that is their nature. Soren, quieter now, still wounded by humiliation, watched without expression. Naelin sat stiffly beside me, frills tight. He had been pressured by his superiors to support Varro. Trade stability mattered. Concord cohesion mattered. And yet Jaren children coughing in fungal haze filled my mind. I stood. My legs trembled. My breathing sacs tightened. The chamber turned toward me surprised. Junior attachés did not speak in council, but I did. Council members, I said, voice amplified by the chamber's acoustics, I witnessed the deep drift attack. I witnessed human intervention. I witnessed the perimeter dock incident, and I have observed human medical aid on the Jaren colony. Varro's crest rippled, irrelevant testimony. I forced my frills to settle, to show control. It is relevant because your motion frames humans as aggressors. That is inaccurate. A stir, I continued, words coming faster now, propelled by something I hadn't known I possessed. Humans have the capability to escalate. They have built fold anchors that can immobilize your fleets. They have engineered countermeasures to grav lances without lethal force. They have demonstrated physiological endurance under vacuum that suggests extensive disaster training. If they wished war, we would already be bleeding. Silence thickened. Helia's field pulsed rapidly. Fold anchors. Varro's crest expanded in shock and anger. Lies. I looked toward Helia, not lies, engineering. Then I turned toward Varro, my voice steady now. Humans have also demonstrated an ethic the Concord does not codify. They rescue without contract. They risk themselves for species that cannot repay. This has already gained them allies among the outer spine. If you intervene, you will not be fighting one world. You will be fighting a narrative. Varro hissed, narratives do not stop fleets. I said the line that became, later, a quote in dozens of station bars. They do, when fleets need ports. A ripple of laughter, nervous but real. Soren's eyes narrowed, calculating. Varro leaned forward. You speak as if you admire them. I felt my frills tremble, then settle into a new shape. Acceptance. I fear them, I said honestly, because they adapt, because they plan for catastrophe like it is weather, because they can weaponize law, vacuum, and kindness. But I also respect them, and I believe intervention will create the very threat you claim to prevent. The chamber buzzed. Naelin stared at me, frills slack, shocked. Varro's crest quivered. You are compromised. I met his gaze. I am informed. Soren finally spoke. Attaché Keth, you claim humans can immobilize fleets. Do you have evidence? I swallowed. I have been shown a fold anchor device by Ellis Rowe. Soren's eyes sharpened. And why would he show you? Because he wanted a witness, I thought. Aloud I said, because he wanted the Concord to understand that humans are not helpless, but also because he wanted to avoid using it. Helia's field calmed slightly. Avoid using it. Varro barked a harsh laugh. Deathworlders avoiding power, absurd. And in that moment, the human reveal landed fully in my mind, like a star going nova. Humans were terrifying not because they lacked restraint, but because they practiced it intentionally. They built weapons and tools not to dominate, but to create options. They were not safe because they were weak. They were safe because they chose to be. Soren raised her hand. The motion for corrective intervention will be delayed pending investigation. Varro's crest flared. Delayed, counselor. Soren cut him off. Delayed. A small victory, not a win, but breathing room. Humans had earned a pause, and pauses in diplomacy could be life. Perimeter corridor, aboard the human vessel Cinder. Ellis summoned me, not formally, no official channel, a simple message delivered through Naelin's secured comm. Keth, if you meant what you said, come to the Cinder. Now. Naelin argued, protocol, risk, council optics. I went anyway. The Cinder's interior smelled like warm metal, recycled air and something else, coffee I later learned, bitter, sharp, comforting in a way that made my breathing sacs flare. The corridors were narrow, utilitarian, lined with handholds. Human ship design assumed turbulence, impact, sudden shifts. Concord ships assumed stability. Assumption violated again. Ellis met me in a maintenance bay. The lighting was amber, softer than Concord white. It made shadows gentle. He was bent over an open panel, hands inside, tools moving with practiced precision. Calm engineer indeed, his defining trait not bravado, but steady competence under strain. He looked up as I entered. You came. Yes, I said. He wiped his hands on a cloth. You spoke well. I did not know how to respond. Praise felt like a destabilizer. Ellis gestured to a bench. Sit, you look like you're about to molt. I sat, frills twitching. The bench vibrated faintly with ship hum. Ellis leaned against the bulkhead. The council delayed intervention. That buys us maybe 2 weeks. Varro will push again harder. Why, I asked. Why is he so determined? Ellis's eyes darkened. Because if the Concord admits it can't control us, every fringe world will notice. Their whole system is built on the idea that compliance is inevitable. I thought of my mother's slate strip, structure, Ellis continued, and because they're scared, not of our weapons, of what we represent, a world that survived without them. I nodded slowly. Ellis walked to a table and activated a hollow display. It showed a map of the trade spine with red markers, pirate activity, embargo checkpoints, patrol routes. Someone's coordinating the pirates, he said. They hit deep drift with military hardware. They hit other stations too, always near human trade lanes, always making it look like we bring chaos. I felt my frills rise. Varro. Ellis's jaw tightened. Maybe, or someone like him, but we don't have proof. What will you do? I asked. Ellis's eyes flicked to me. We're going to do something the Concord can't understand. He tapped the display. A new set of markers appeared, human ships forming a chain toward the Jaren colony, toward other outer worlds. We are building a rescue corridor, he said. A humanitarian lane. We escort medicine, evac civilians, repair habitats. We do it openly. We live stream it. We make it impossible for the council to paint us as predators. I frowned. That will provoke them. Ellis nodded. Yes. Then why? Because, Ellis said, voice low, Varro wants a clean enemy. If we stay quiet, he can invent one. If we become visible, he has to fight what we actually are. Breathe a moment, but heavy with moral strategy. I asked, and if he attacks anyway? Ellis's gaze went distant, as if he saw future wreckage. Then we use the fold anchors, not to kill, to hold them in place, to force negotiation. That is still war, I whispered. Ellis shook his head. It's leverage. It's a way to stop bullets without firing ours first. A diplomatic reversal engine, win without firing first. I tasted coffee in the air bitter. What do you want from me? I asked. Ellis's eyes returned to me. I want you to keep speaking. I want you to keep being inconvenient inside that chamber, and I want you to understand something. He stepped closer. We didn't sign as Terra Sol to be clever. We signed that way because your treaty was designed to take away our right to decide. We used another name because you would not respect ours. I swallowed. And if the council nullifies anyway? Ellis's voice became soft, almost gentle. Then we become what you fear, not because we want to, because we have to. My frills trembled. I believed him, and that was the most frightening part. Outer Spine, Rescue Corridor Alpha. The corridor was not a physical lane. It was an agreement enforced by presence. Human ships, freighters, retrofitted miners, the Cinder itself, formed a moving line, escorting convoys of medical supplies, evac pods, repair drones. They painted their hulls with a symbol, a simple circle with a line through it, like a breath mark. It meant air. It meant life. Outer worlds began to join, Jaren shuttles, Selen cargo tugs, even a few Atheran probability skiffs, curious and uneasy. The Concord watched. Varro sent patrol ships to inspect. Humans let them, but only under strict conditions. No weapons drawn, no tampering with life support systems, no delays of medical cargo. The patrols bristled at being told terms by a developing species. But the eyes of the Outer Spine were on them. One patrol captain, Dren, crest-scarred, attempted to seize a human reactor component anyway. Ellis did not shout. He simply deployed a fold anchor. Space around the patrol ship shimmered, then settled into a dead calm. The ship's fold drive whined, attempted to engage, failed. The captain's comm came through, panicked. We cannot fold. What have you done? Ellis's voice was steady. I've removed your ability to run away. The captain hissed. We are under attack. Ellis replied, no, you're under supervision. Vision, a word the Concord loved, turned back on them. The patrol ship sat in space, immobilized, while a human tech team guided them through manual inspection protocols without touching the reactor component. After 3 hours, Ellis released the anchor. The patrol ship folded away immediately like an animal fleeing a trap. No shots fired, no deaths, and yet the message echoed through the spine. Humans could stop you without killing you. Humans could force you to face consequences. Fear spread. But so did awe. Helia, observing from Atheran's skiff, sent a private message to me. Attaché Keth, her voice flowed like water. Your probability thread is shifting. Humans are altering the Concord's future. I replied, hands trembling, is it good? Helia paused, a rare thing for Atheran. It is unknown, but it is not boring. That from an Atheran was nearly praise. Council chamber, orbit of Vera. Varro could not tolerate being made to look weak. He called for immediate intervention again, this time framed as protection of Concord sovereignty. Humans are deploying spacetime stabilization weapons, he declared. They immobilize patrol ships. They are building alliances. They are undermining Concord authority. Soren's eyes were cold, and yet they have not killed. Varro's crest flared. They will. Helia spoke, voice urgent. The probability of catastrophic war increases if intervention proceeds now. Humans are forcing a new equilibrium. Varro snarled. Equilibrium is not safety. Then he played his final card. He revealed intelligence, fabricated. I would later learn that humans had installed fold anchors near Vera itself, threatening the council world. Gasps. Outrage, fear. Soren's ceremonial calm finally fractured. Is this true? The chamber turned toward me, because I had become, unwillingly, a human-linked witness. I stood, heart hammering. I have seen fold anchors. I have not seen deployment near Vera. Varro's crest, inflated. Of course you haven't, you are kept ignorant. I clenched my frills, forcing steadiness. Or you are lying. The chamber erupted. Varro's segmented arm lifted, pointing at me. Treasonous attaché, you would side with deathworlders against your own concord. I felt the weight of thousands of eyes, the humid air pressing on my membranes, and I realized this was the ethical obstacle, not physics, not tactics, not law, loyalty. What did loyalty mean when structure caused suffering? I spoke, voice shaking but clear. I side with life. If the Concord cannot distinguish between control and survival, then perhaps the Concord must change. Silence. Soren stared at me as if seeing a crack in her world. Varro hissed, "Then you will be removed." Guards moved toward me. Naelin rose abruptly, frills flared wide. No. The chamber froze. Ambassador Naelin, cautious and loyal, now standing between me and the guards. His voice was strained. "High Counselor, remove Keth and you prove the human's point. You punish truth because it is inconvenient." Soren's eyes narrowed. "Ambassador Naelin, you risk your position." Naelin's frills trembled. "I risk it because I have watched outer worlds breathe again, because humans refuse to accept your acceptable losses." There it was, Naelin, representing the system's structure, shifting. My arc was not alone. Varro's crest quivered with rage. "You are all infected by deathworlder sentiment." And then alarms, real alarms, not political. The coral lattice hum spiked into a harsh, discordant vibration. Lights flickered. The chamber's air pressure shifted, making my breathing sacs tighten. A voice came over comms, panicked. "Unknown fleet emerging at Vera perimeter. Pirate signatures. Mass count too many." Too many. The pirates had followed the rescue corridor's attention back to the core, or someone had unleashed them. Varro's crest expanded in triumph and fear. See, chaos follows humans. Soren's face went pale. "Defense grid." Another voice. "Defense grid compromised. Gravlance signatures detected." Gravlances again. This was the tactical escalation to climax. The pirates were not random. They were equipped, coordinated, and the Council world, seat of power, was vulnerable. Humans were far away. The Concord fleet was scattered, and the only ships near Vera with the capacity to respond quickly were human. Ellis's message cut through the chaos, broadcast wide. "Council chamber, this is Ellis Rowe aboard the Cinder. We saw the pirate fleet fold in. We are en route. Do not engage the Gravlances directly." Varro shouted, "You are not authorized." Ellis's voice was hard now. "Authorization can come after you stop dying." Soren swallowed. "Human vessel. What do you propose?" Ellis answered with the calm of an engineer staring at a burning system. "I propose we use your own station as bait," he said. The chamber went silent. Soren's eyes widened. "Bait." Ellis continued. "They want Vera, they want the symbol, they want to break you. They've got Gravlances to punch through shields, but Gravlances need alignment. They need time. We can deny them time." Helia's field shimmered. "How?" Ellis's voice came, and it carried the weight of the reveal, the terrifying invention used responsibly. "We built something called a null veil," he said. "It's a field that collapses localized gravity gradients. It can scramble a Gravlance's lock, but it also destabilizes any ship inside it, including ours." Soren's face tightened. "You would deploy it near Vera." Ellis hesitated. "Yes, but I need your consent, because it will disrupt your orbital infrastructure. It will damage satellites. It might disable parts of your defense grid. And if we miscalculate, it could drop debris into your atmosphere." "Real cost, no easy win," Varro barked laughter. "They will destroy you to save you. Deathworlder madness. Ellis's voice went quiet. It's not madness, it's triage. Sorin looked at her counsel, at Varro's fear, at Helia's flickering uncertainty, at Naelin's tense frills, at me standing with lungs full of humid air. Then she said, voice brittle, do it. Varro snarled, High Counselor. Sorin cut him off, do it. The human ship Cinder and its escort were given emergency clearance. The Council world would be saved by the species it tried to leash, and in my membranes, the humid air tasted like inevitability. Space over Vera, battle perimeter. I watched from the Council chamber's emergency observation deck, where screens wrapped around us like a horizon. Outside, space was a velvet black, pierced by the glitter of ships. The pirate fleet was immense, dozens of vessels, some crude, some startlingly advanced. Gravland's ships glowed with mass distortion, their spines humming like distant thunder even through vacuum sensors. Concord defense drones swarmed, firing beams, but Gravland's fields warped their trajectories. A Veran cruiser attempted a direct strike. Its beam bent, scattered, and the cruiser's shield flickered. Then the Cinder arrived. It folded in harshly, space tearing like cloth. Behind it came a handful of other human ships, smaller, patched, stubborn. They formed a line between Vera and the Gravland's ships. And then Ellis did something that made my frills go rigid with awe. He opened a wideband broadcast to both pirates and Concord. His voice filled the chamber. Pirate fleet, he said, you have 2 minutes to power down your Gravlances and withdraw. If you do, we will allow you to leave. If you don't, we will deploy the null veil. The pirate response came, distorted, a chorus of harsh clicks and snarls. Deathworlder, you threaten what you cannot control. Ellis replied, I'm not threatening, I'm informing. The timer began, 1 minute, 2, the pirates fired first. A Gravlance beam surged, warping space like a visible distortion aimed at the Cinder. Ellis deployed the null veil. On the screen it appeared as a faint shimmer like heat haze in a desert. It expanded outward, enveloping the Gravlance beams, the human ships, and parts of the pirate line. Immediately, the Gravlance distortions faltered, their lock collapsing into chaotic ripples. But the pirate ships inside the veil began to drift, their formation breaking as gravity gradients vanished. Thrusters sputtered, unable to find stable reference. The human ships also wobbled, their hulls stressed. Warning lights flared on their external panels. Ellis's voice remained steady. Hold, adjust thrust vectors, keep the veil centered. The Cinder's engines flared, fighting instability. The pirates panicked. Some tried to fold out, but fold drives inside the null veil failed, spacetime too scrambled, they were trapped. Concord cruisers outside the veil had a clear shot now. Beams lanced through, striking pirate ships' exposed hulls. Explosions blossomed, brief, bright flowers in vacuum, no gore, just light and debris. The pirates attempted to fire mass drivers, but their aim was ruined by drift. The battle was turning. And then the cost. A pirate ship, destabilized, spun out of control toward Vera's orbital habitats, civilian rings where delegates' families lived. Its trajectory was a slow arc, but inevitable. Concord defense drones could not intercept fast enough. Ellis saw it. We've got a runaway, he said, voice suddenly sharp. If that hits the habitat ring. Sorin's voice came through comms, strained. Can you stop it? Ellis did not answer immediately. He looked, I imagine, at his own ships shaking inside the veil. Then he said quietly, yes, but it will cost. The Cinder broke formation. It surged forward, engines screaming, pushing deeper into the null veil's instability. Its hull plating began to shear off in strips, spinning away like flaked skin. Sparks, ionized gas, sprayed from a ruptured conduit. Ellis's voice was calm, but I heard strain now. All ships, maintain veil, Cinder is going to ram. Ram, a human word, primitive, direct. Naelin beside me whispered, frills trembling. They will destroy themselves. I stared, unable to breathe. The Cinder collided with the runaway pirate ship, not head-on, angled like a careful shove. The impact sent both ships spinning, but the pirate ship's trajectory shifted, away from the habitat ring toward open space. The Cinder's hull buckled, its engines flickered, internal atmosphere vented in a glittering spray. Ellis's comm crackled with alarms. "We've lost Deck 3, a human voice shouted. "Pressure drop." Ellis's voice strained now. "Seal it. Move people, keep the veil stable." The pirates inside the veil began to surrender, broadcasting power-down signals. Concord cruisers moved in to detain. The battle ended not with annihilation, but with containment. Humans had forced it, and the Cinder, crippled, drifted. Ellis's voice came once more, quieter, breathier. "Vera, habitat ring is safe." Then static, my lungs burned. I realized I had been holding my breath like a human, unconsciously. Fear surged. Had Ellis died? The council chamber was silent except for alarms and the choral hum, now frantic. Soren's face was pale. Varro's crest was slack, shock overriding rage. Helia's field flickered, voice soft. Probability of human survival, uncertain. Nailin whispered, "He did it anyway." And in that moment, the HFY payoff began to crystallize. Humans could have used their terrifying inventions to dominate. Instead, they used them to save a world that tried to control them. They paid real cost. They earned the outcome. Aboard the crippled Cinder, salvage tether. I insisted on going. Protocol screamed against it. But the council had no choice. If humans died saving Vera, the narrative would shatter the Concord. A rescue shuttle, Selen-built, docked to the Cinder's ruptured flank. The airlock smelled of burnt insulation and cold metal. Inside, the corridor lights were emergency red, dim and flickering. The gravity was uneven, making my steps lurch. Human crew moved through the ship with practiced efficiency despite damage, sealing bulkheads, carrying injured crewmates. Their faces were streaked with sweat, eyes focused. No panic, disaster training. I found Ellis in the engineering bay, slumped against a console. His suit was torn, a pressure band wrapped around his arm. His face was pale but conscious. He looked up as I approached, and his mouth twitched weakly. "Told you," he rasped, voice raw. "Failure modes." I felt my frills flare, relief and shock mixing. "You are alive," I said. Ellis exhaled. Annoyingly. A human medic, Sana, knelt beside him, checking his pulse. Her hands were steady. "Don't move," she snapped at him. Ellis muttered, "Yes, doctor." I crouched awkwardly, my joints protesting the unstable gravity. The air here was dry, metallic, tasting of smoke. It irritated my membranes, but I welcomed it. It felt real. "The pirates," I said. "They surrendered. Vera is safe." Ellis closed his eyes briefly. "Good." "The council," I began. Ellis opened his eyes, and there was something like sadness in them. "They'll try again." I hesitated. "After this, after you saved them." Ellis's voice was quiet. "Systems don't change because they're grateful, they change because they have to." Sana glanced at me. "Who are you?" "Keth," I said. "Selenata Shea." Sana's eyes softened slightly. "You're the one who spoke in the chamber." I nodded. She looked back at Ellis. "You were right to recruit witnesses." Ellis gave a faint smile. "Told you." I felt something settle inside me. My arc had reached its pivot. Fear still existed, but it was now braided with respect. Confusion had become clarity, insight had become conviction, and conviction demanded action. "Ellis," I said softly, "what do you need next?" Ellis's eyes met mine. "A new treaty, signed with our real name, and your council's admission that we are equals." I swallowed. "They will resist." Ellis nodded. "Then we keep saving people until resistance becomes shame." It was absurd, and yet it worked, because humans were stubborn enough to make morality unavoidable. Fallout Council Chamber, orbit of Vera. The aftermath of the battle was chaos in the council, ships damaged, Infrastructure disrupted by the null veil, satellites dead, comma rays flickering, and yet Vera lived. The council convened in emergency session. The air in the chamber smelled of stress, ozone from overworked systems, damp membranes, the sour tang of fear. Ellis appeared via hollow, seated in a med bay, arm in a sling, face bruised but eyes steady. Soren spoke first, voice hoarse. "Human representative, you saved Vera." Ellis nodded once. "Yes." Varro spoke, crest trembling. "You endangered it with your null veil." Ellis's eyes hardened. "You endangered it by empowering pirates with grav lances." Varro recoiled. "Light." Helia's field shimmered, voice cold. "Probability analysis of pirate hardware origin suggests internal Concord leak. Dren supply chains implicated." Varro's segmented hands clenched. Soren's eyes narrowed. "Council member Varro, did you authorize weapons transfer to pirates?" Varro hissed, "Never." Ellis leaned forward slightly. "Maybe you didn't. Maybe someone under you did. Maybe they thought chaos would justify intervention. Either way, your policies created the opening." Varro's crest collapsed slightly. Weakness. The chamber turned its gaze on him like predators sensing blood in water. Soren exhaled. "The Concord cannot afford internal fracture." Ellis's voice was steady. "Then stop fracturing it by trying to control what you don't understand." Soren looked at him for a long moment. Then she said something I never expected from a high counselor. "What do you want?" Ellis's jaw tightened. "Recognition, lift the embargo, end boarding without consent, and rewrite the treaty." Varro snarled, "After your deception." Ellis cut him off, voice sharp. "We signed under another name because you offered us a leash. You want honesty, offer respect." Silence. Nail-in rose, frills lifted, voice clear. "I support the human motion." Murmurs, other delegates, especially outer spine representatives, began to echo. "I support." "We support." The council, once unified in arrogance, now fractured by witness and survival. Soren's eyes flicked around the chamber, calculating. Then she spoke, voice heavy with reluctant admiration. "The Concord will enter renegotiation with the human governments of Earth, under their chosen name." Ellis exhaled, shoulders sagging. "And," Soren added, gaze sliding toward Varro, "a formal inquiry into unauthorized weapons transfer will begin immediately." Varro's crest flared in panic. "This is..." Soren cut him off. "This is consequence." A human word, adopted by the council, the fallout landed. Humans had forced change without conquest. They had paid in hull plating and blood pressure bans, not genocide. And the galaxy, watching, began to adjust its assumptions. Names were not sacred. Intent was. Rescue was not waste. It was power. Resolution, Jaren Colony and Outer Spine. Over the next cycles, the rescue corridor became semi-official. Concord patrols no longer boarded human ships without consent. Embargo lifted in stages. Trade resumed with new protocols. Humans continued to escort medicine, to repair habitats, to offer engineering assistance that made Concord techs grind their mandibles in envy. They violated another cultural assumption too, that developing species should accept gifts with reverence. Humans accepted tech, yes, but then they modified it, repurposed it, improved it, and sometimes returned it to the Concord with notes. "We found a better way," they would say casually. It was infuriating and inspiring. I traveled with Nail into Earth for the first renegotiation session. Earth's orbital station, named Harborline, was a ring of metal and glass, but unlike Concord rings, it was cluttered with visible scaffolding, external repairs, modules bolted on like growths. It looked alive, evolving. Inside, the air smelled of coffee and machine oil. Lights were warm. Humans moved with a constant hum of motion, like their baseline was activity. Ellis greeted us, still in simple clothing, still without ceremonial bands. "Welcome," he said, "to Earth, to humanity. Humanity, the word felt different than Terra Sol, less legal, more defiant. Naelin dipped his head. We come in good faith. Ellis smiled faintly. Good, we're tired of bad faith. The negotiations were tense, but different now. The Concord no longer spoke from a position of assumed superiority. Humans no longer spoke as supplicants. They spoke as survivors demanding respect. And in quiet moments between sessions, I found myself watching humans at work, the technician laughing as she tightened a bolt, a medic soothing a frightened alien child with soft words, an engineer cursing at a stubborn panel, then solving it anyway. They were not mythical. They were messy. And yet their stubborn courage stitched itself into systems around them. One evening, as I stood near a viewport watching Earth below blue cloud-wrapped bright, a human approached me. Sana, she offered a cup of coffee. I hesitated, then took it. The warmth seeped into my hands. The smell was bitter and sharp. You did good, she said. I sipped. It was unpleasant and strangely comforting. I did what was necessary, I said. Sana smiled. Yeah, that's how it starts. I looked at the planet. Why do you rescue without contracts? Sana's expression softened. Because we know what it's like to be alone in the dark. Because if we don't, who will? I thought of Concord logic, resources, trade, calculation, and then I thought of the Cinder ramming a runaway ship to save strangers. Your ethic is irrational, I said. Sana shrugged. Maybe, but it works. It did, because now the galaxy had to account for a species that treated life as non-negotiable. And that changed everything. Epilogue, Council Archive Vault, Orbit of Vera. Months later, I stood alone in the Council Archive Vault. The vault was quiet, cold, lit by thin strips of pale light. Shelves of data crystals hummed softly, a constant whisper of stored history. I had been granted access as part of the inquiry into Varro's weapons leak. Varro had not been formally convicted yet. The Concord moved slowly when power was threatened, but he had been sidelined. Humans had not demanded his execution. They had demanded transparency, another restraint. I approached a sealed archive node labeled in old Concord script. Terra Sol, the dead name. I accessed the embedded addendum Ellis had filed at signature lock, the one that had humiliated the council. Reading it now, in quiet, I saw something I had missed. The addendum didn't just redefine Terra Sol as a shell corporation. It included a second clause, buried deeper, written in human legal style, but conforming to Concord format. If the Concord attempted unilateral nullification, the treaty's binding terms would automatically transfer to the human governments of Earth, under their chosen name, but with all restrictive clauses voided. A trap, a failsafe, a puzzle with layered answers. Humans had not just escaped the leash. They had designed the leash to snap back and strike anyone who tried to tighten it, and yet they had never activated it, not once. They had held the power and chosen not to use it, because the moment they did, the Concord would become their enemy permanently. They were playing a longer game. I exhaled, frills trembling. I thought of Ellis's words, systems don't change because they're grateful, they change because they have to. Humans were making the Concord have to. As I turned to leave, a new data packet pinged my slate, routed through secure channels. Sender, Helia. Message. Keth, probability anomaly detected. Unknown FTL signatures at the far rim, not pirate, not Concord. Pattern resembles deliberate silence. Deliberate silence, a species that didn't broadcast, that didn't announce itself. A new thread, my frills lifted. I sent a reply with trembling fingers. Do humans know? Helia's response came after a pause. Not yet, but they will. They always notice the quiet. I left the archive vault, the hum of history behind me, the taste of humid coral air ahead, and somewhere beyond the trade's spine, something watching. And for the first time, my fear was not only of humans. It was of what would happen when the galaxy realized that humanity had just begun to learn its real name among the stars, and it had chosen to be known.